He used to leave early, return late, and talk in half sentences that led nowhere. The sound of the front door closing had become more familiar than his voice. I'd wait at the dinner table longer than I should, fork idle, plate untouched, pretending the ticking clock was a conversation partner. When he finally walked in, the first thing he did was unbutton his sleeves, not look at me. I stopped asking how his day was because the answer was always busy. It was always busy. And somewhere between "I love you" and "I'll be late," something essential slipped away without either of us noticing. That I used to count the small silences that sat between us, but eventually, I stopped counting. It became normal, like breathing without thinking. We slept side by side but existed in separate worlds. Even the air between us felt cold, polite, careful. When his phone buzzed, he turned it face down. I never asked who it was. I didn't have the energy to sound like a jealous wife when, in truth, I just wanted him to notice I was still here. Then there was his friend, Ryan's oldest, Zion. I had seen him dozens of times before but never like that evening when he came over for tea. Maybe it was the way he asked, "You look tired, are you okay?" Simple words, but they landed like something I'd been starving for. He looked at me the way people look when they actually want to hear the answer. I said I was fine, of course. I always said that. But his eyes lingered a moment longer than they should have, soft and aware, and for the first time in months, I felt visible. He laughed easily, talked about things that weren't spreadsheets or deadlines. I laughed too, a sound that surprised even me. It had been so long since I'd heard it. When he left that night, I caught myself smiling at the door long after it closed. It scared me a little, how something as harmless as kindness could make me tremble. Days passed, routine swallowed everything again, but his words replayed in my head. "You look tired." Such a small thing. Still, I found myself dressing a bit differently the next time he came by. Nothing drastic, just a touch more presentable than usual. When he complimented the tea, I said thank you too quickly. Ryan didn't notice. He never did. Zion and I started sharing small things, a text about a book, a passing message about a recipe, harmless details. At least that's what I told myself. His words carried warmth, the kind that filled the empty spaces Ryan left behind. I didn't look for it, it found me. I told myself it was friendship. But friendship doesn't make your hands shake when the phone lights up with his name. The first time he called me Aish instead of Aisha, I felt something shift inside me. Familiarity. Tenderness. The kind that doesn't belong between a married woman and her husband's friend. I should have drawn a line, but instead, I let it blur. We spoke about everything, how lonely marriages can feel, how two people can sleep inches apart yet live miles away. He listened the way Ryan used to, before his love turned into obligation. One evening, I found myself telling Zion something I hadn't told anyone. Sometimes I feel like I disappeared, but no one noticed. There was a pause, then he said quietly, "I noticed." Just that. Simple, steady. The kind of sentence that breaks something open. I didn't know what to say after that. From that night, my heart began reacting to his presence before my mind could protest. Every message, every glance carried weight. I became careful around Ryan, not out of guilt but fear he might see what I was feeling, though I doubted he'd care enough to look. It was subtle, the way things changed. He'd visit, and my pulse would betray me. Our words danced around what we didn't say. There were moments when silence did all the speaking, when our eyes met and lingered too long, when his laughter trailed into something softer, when my breath caught at the simplest touch of his hand passing a cup. The night he brushed my fingers, I froze. It was accidental, or maybe not, but in that single instant, something electric ran through me. I didn't move away. I couldn't. His eyes flickered up, searching mine, asking a question neither of us dared to voice. My hand stayed still under his, heartbeat loud enough to drown everything else. For a second, I forgot who I was supposed to be. After he left, I stood by the window for a long time, staring into the dark street, my hand still warm where his skin had touched mine. I wanted to feel ashamed, but all I felt was alive. It terrified me. I told myself it was a mistake, that I was just lonely, that it would fade. But deep down, I knew that something irreversible had started in that quiet moment, something that would demand to be faced, no matter how much I tried to hide from it, and as I lay beside my husband that night, his back turned to me as always, I closed my eyes and felt the ache of a truth I didn't want to name. Someone else had made me remember what it was like to feel again. I told myself not to think about him, but his name echoed in my mind like a quiet hum that refused to fade. The days passed with the same dull rhythm, Ryan's absence, my silence, the echo of words never spoken. But beneath it all, something restless stirred. I'd scroll through my messages, pretending not to wait for his text, then feel both relief and disappointment when it came. Every conversation began casually and ended too softly. Each one left a trace of something unsaid. One evening, when the rain began to fall, his message appeared, "Are you okay?" Just that. No reason, no pretext. I stared at it longer than I should have before replying, "Just tired." He called a few minutes later, voice low, careful. "You sound like you've been holding your breath for days," he said. I laughed faintly, denying it, though he was right. For the first time, someone had noticed the quiet exhaustion I carried like a second skin. That I don't remember how it turned into meeting him that night. I told myself it was just to talk, to clear the confusion, to make sure nothing dangerous was happening. But the moment I saw him, all the reasons I had rehearsed vanished. The air between us was thick with everything we hadn't said. He looked at me as if I was something fragile and familiar all at once. His eyes didn't demand anything, they offered understanding. That was enough to make my heart tremble. That we talked about the same things, loneliness, the slow death of affection, the way people drift without realizing. He spoke quietly, his words dipping into spaces that hurt. "You don't deserve to feel invisible," he said, almost like a confession. I wanted to protest, to remind him we were both crossing a line we shouldn't even approach. But the truth was, I didn't want to step back. I wanted to be seen, to be heard, to feel something real again. The silence between words grew heavier, charged. I could hear the sound of my own heartbeat filling the pauses. When he reached out, his fingers brushed mine, gentle, hesitant. I didn't pull away this time either. Every part of me screamed that it was wrong, but my body stayed still, my mind surrendering to the quiet warmth spreading through me. His touch wasn't demanding, it was almost questioning, asking if he should stop. I didn't tell him to. When he whispered my name, it sounded like something sacred, not scandalous. The world outside ceased to exist. There was no husband, no guilt, no right or wrong, just two people who had been empty for too long, finding something that felt alive again. His voice trembled when he said, "Tell me to go, and I will." I should have. But instead, I heard myself breathe, "Don't stop." The words came out softer than I intended, like a plea more than permission. It wasn't lust that followed, it was recognition. The kind that breaks you open and reminds you that you still feel, that your heart hasn't gone completely numb. Every sound, every breath, every shiver was tangled with the fear of being caught and the relief of finally being seen. My thoughts scattered. There were no promises, no declarations, only silence filled with everything forbidden. When it ended, there was no triumph, no satisfaction, only quiet. I sat still, unsure of what I had done or what it meant. He looked at me, guilt flickering behind his eyes, and whispered, "I'm sorry." I shook my head. "Don't be," I said, though I didn't know if I meant it. The truth was, I didn't regret it. I regretted how much I had needed it. The drive home felt unreal. The rain had stopped, but everything looked blurred through the windshield. I watched the city lights stretch into endless lines, my reflection faint on the glass, eyes tired, lips trembling, skin marked with something more than touch. I didn't feel dirty. I felt human, and that was somehow worse. When I entered the house, the silence greeted me first. Ryan was asleep on the couch, TV still flickering. I stood there for a long moment, watching him, wondering if he'd somehow sense what had happened. But he didn't stir. His hand still held the remote, his phone beside him, unread messages glowing faintly. I felt a strange ache, half guilt, half pity. That I went to the bathroom and stared at my reflection. My eyes looked different, alive, conflicted, awake. I didn't know whether to cry or smile. I had done something unforgivable, yet I couldn't bring myself to wish it undone. It wasn't about betrayal anymore. It was about a piece of myself I'd buried, now unearthed by accident. Later, lying in bed beside Ryan, I tried to sleep, but his breathing sounded foreign. The distance between us had never felt greater. I closed my eyes, remembering Zions's voice, the way he'd said my name, the way I had asked him not to stop. Those words echoed louder in my head than the rain outside that By morning. Everything seemed the same, yet nothing truly was. Ryan left early, as usual. I made coffee, stared at the rising steam, and wondered what line had actually been crossed, the one between two people, or the one between my old self and who I just become. My phone buzzed once. It was him. "Are you okay?" I typed yes and deleted it. I didn't reply. Some things, once spoken, can never be taken back. Still, all day, the memory lingered, not the act itself, but the feeling it awakened. The unbearable truth that I had found something in the wrong place, and now, no matter what happened next, I would never be able to go back to who I was before that night.
The morning after should have been filled with warmth, with laughter echoing from relatives still lingering in the house, with me holding on to the glow of being newly married. Instead, I carried the heaviness of a secret I had no one to share with. Every glance I gave Ian felt strained, every smile forced. He moved around effortlessly, greeting family members, playing the role of a husband as though nothing weighed on him. That perfect mask of his both fascinated and terrified me, how easily he could bury truths beneath his charm. That I noticed Sod that morning, standing off to the side, his eyes resting on me with a concern he didn't voice. He was Ayan's cousin, close like a brother, someone who had always been kind without stepping too close. But his silence had a shape to it, the kind of silence that carries knowledge it cannot share. Later, when I found a moment alone, he approached me carefully, like someone debating whether to pull a bandage off a wound. His words came hesitant, but they landed like blows. He told me there were things I didn't know about Aya, things that would hurt, but things I deserved to hear. At first, I wanted to run from the conversation. The last thing I wanted was another fracture in the illusion I was already struggling to hold together. But Sod's tone carried no malice, only a reluctant honesty. He told me that even while Ayan had been preparing to marry me, he hadn't let go of another woman. The relationship hadn't ended when it should have. It bled into our engagement, kept alive in secret meetings, hidden conversations, late-night calls that family never noticed. My chest constricted as the words sank in. Part of me clung to the possibility that Sod was mistaken, but deep inside, I knew he wasn't. His eyes didn't lie, his voice didn't waver. I asked if it was Sarah, my mind desperate to fit the pieces into one betrayal instead of two, but his silence told me otherwise. This wasn't Sarah, it was someone else. A woman I didn't know, someone outside the walls of my world, yet someone who had been close enough to occupy the place I thought was mine alone. That I felt the ground slipping beneath me. First Sarah, now this shadowy figure I couldn't even name. The betrayal spread wider, growing roots into places I couldn't reach. I tried to steady my breathing, to keep myself from unraveling in front of Sod, but inside I was collapsing. He didn't say more, only muttered that he had kept quiet to protect the family, to avoid scandal. But watching me now, he could no longer carry it in silence. Then he left me with the weight of his confession, leaving me to drown in questions with no answers. That night, I searched. While Ayan stepped into the shower, I looked through his belongings with trembling hands, not sure if I wanted proof or reassurance. What I found was worse than I expected: another phone, tucked away in the drawer beneath neatly folded clothes. A phone I had never seen before. The messages were there, threads of conversations with a name saved only as an initial. Words of affection, late-night promises, talk of missed moments and secret meetings. Some messages were weeks old, others from just days before the wedding. The kind of intimacy that shouldn't exist outside the vows we were meant to share. My body shook as I put it back exactly as I found it, every nerve in me screaming. The walls around me seemed to close in, the room colder than it had been a moment before. When Ayan emerged, smiling, casual, wrapping his arms around me like nothing had shifted, I almost screamed. How could he look at me with such ease while carrying such deceit? His touch burned with questions I couldn't ask, his smile carved wounds I couldn't reveal. I tried subtle confrontations. I asked about loyalty, about honesty, speaking in hypotheticals, hoping he would flinch, hoping he would break the act. But he didn't. His answers were smooth, measured, almost rehearsed. His denial of any wrongdoing was wrapped in laughter, as though my questions were naive. He kissed my forehead and told me to stop worrying, that love was enough. And yet, the more he spoke, the less I believed. Every moment with him now carried a dual edge. His gestures of affection no longer comforted me, they mocked me. The promises he had made at the altar, so grand and public, now felt hollow. My heart replayed Saad's confession, the secret phone, the messages from a woman I couldn't even picture. What was I to Ayan, a partner, or simply a mask he wore to please his family while his heart wandered elsewhere? I lay awake again that night, my body stiff beside his, unable to surrender to rest. I thought of how marriage was meant to be built on trust, on truth, and how mine was already drowning in lies. The past with Sarah was a wound, but this ongoing deception was a disease spreading into the very core of what we were supposed to be. And the more I thought about it, the more I realized the distance between us wasn't accidental, it was deliberate. Ayan was hiding behind walls he had built long before me, and I was just beginning to see how high they really were. By the time dawn broke, my mind was filled with a chilling certainty. Love wasn't the foundation of this marriage. Secrets were. And I knew, with a sinking heart, that this was only the beginning of what I was about to uncover. This is section 2, almost equals 770 words. Shall I continue with section 3, 760 words, to complete the story arc with the final shocking secret?